Welcome back to the TrailBLAZER pod. Did you know that only 10% of cardiologists are women, and hospitals typically admit just 3 to 7 applicants into their cardiology department each year? Our guest today defied those odds. She got married at 20, became a mother at 22, all while pursuing a medical degree. English wasn't even her first language. She shares her inspiring journey of resilience as she balanced family life, a demanding medical career, and stayed true to her personal beliefs. Let's dive in.
How are you doing? Welcome.
Thank you.
This is my cat Tiger. He decided to join us
I
today.
love it. Very cute.
So, I like to do this with all my guests. I like to basically create a foundation of who our guest is and where they grew up. And yours is especially interesting. Can you share what it was like growing up in Morocco, then moving to France, and then moving to the US and moving to Israel?
So, my name, currently right now, my professional name is Dr. Sarah Rosanel, but I was actually born Rosine Knafo.
Oh,
Rosine is actually my first name that everybody calls me by. I have two names. Sarah is my first name on paper, and my second name, middle name, is Rosa,
wow.
which is after my grandmother who passed away from a car accident tragically in her 30s, leaving
Oh my God.
behind 8 children. So that was very tragic. My dad was the oldest of the eight,
Wow.
and he was only 17 years old. So essentially, she left a big legacy for all of us and all of my dad's siblings. Everyone has a child that's called Rosa, Rosie,
Wow.
Rosine, which is me. But they call me Sarah as the first name because they wanted to have a biblical name first.
Hmm.
So that's fine. So growing up, I was Rosine Knafo. Knafo is my maiden name. Was born in Casablanca, Morocco at the age of 9. My family actually relocated to France. The reason being is because they were worried that something would happen to the king at the time. It was the King Hassan II. And they were worried that if he would die, the son, the successor, was not going to be nice to the Jews. If we recall the history for all of us for many many generations, whether we live in Europe with the persecution that we've experienced there, or in Muslim countries, Arabic countries like Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Iraq, Iran, you name it, it's always as per the good of the king or as per the government, if they're going to be nice to the Jewish citizen. So at the time, the king was sick and the Jews were scared, and especially my parents. So they said, let's go to France, and we'll take it from there. If the king dies, then we'll see what's the situation in Morocco. And anyway, I'm the second of five, and my parents were like, you know what? We may as well establish ourselves in France. Our kids will go to universities there, and we're going to stay close to our children because in Morocco we grew up there, meaning we have Jewish school, high school, middle school, elementary, but there's no Jewish universities, and the curriculum that we study is actually a French curriculum. So at the time my parents moved to France, I was 9 years old, so I did my whole middle school there. I did fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade in France, and the king had died, and nothing had happened bad to the Jews with the successor, which is the current successor, Mohammed VI, his son. And actually, we felt a lot of anti Semitism in France
Wow.
that we haven't felt in Morocco. And we also felt this anti kids culture. So, like I mentioned, I'm one of five. We were living in a beautiful apartment in France. And on the sixth floor, I remember, and as a kid, we were a bit rowdy, running around the apartment, giving our parents a hard time for bedtime,
Yeah.
typical kid stuff. And I remember the neighbors calling the police on us and having the police coming at, I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock at night, saying, oh, the neighbors have called us and you guys have to be quiet or something like that. But as a child, or as us coming from Morocco, we don't call the police in a lightly manner. So that was very scary for us. And I remember that memory for me as a kid, and I was like, I'm never going to live in France growing up. So that was very traumatic,
Wow.
and really that feeling of not being welcome, being looked down upon for being a big family. Even though we didn't ask anything to anyone, we were very comfortable and were very self-sufficient, but for some reason there was this jealousy of no, families in France should have only one child, and if you have two already it's too much, and us being five was like an anomaly to them. I didn't feel like I fit in, and then we went back to Morocco. I spent high school over there, And like I mentioned, my parents knew that we were not going to stay after high school in Morocco, and France was not an option because we experienced it and we did not like it. So the options for Sephardic family living in Morocco would be either you send your children to Israel or you send your children to Canada or France or America. So Israel was not an option for my parents because they were very overprotective and they did not want us to go to a country where we could possibly be not safe, even though we love Israel. We're very Zionist. We've been to Israel our entire childhood, multiple summers. We have a lot of families there. So they looked into other options and they found Yeshiva University, which is a Jewish university in New York, where you get to spend Shabbaton there. It follows our values. It was girls only, the campus in the south, in the Midtown Manhattan, and in the north you had the boys campus. So I had an older brother who's actually a year and a half, almost 2 years older than me. Academically, he went in January, essentially, of my senior year in high school. So he went 6 months, a whole semester before me, and I followed him a semester after. So my parents felt secure that, okay, at least, Rosine's older brother is there. He's going to look after her.
How
And
old are you?
I'm 17.
17.
I'm 17 years old. I graduated high school early, not because I skipped any grade, but just the way it worked out. And I started college. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, which is, by the way, very atypical for a woman born in a traditional family where everybody. I mean, my dad was in business. My dad has 8 brothers and sisters. Everybody also in business. Same thing with my mom. Usually, the woman don't work, they stay home, they raise the kids, and it's really the man who's not only the main breadwinner, but the one who goes after the careers and after higher education, so to say. But interestingly enough, my parents always, especially my dad, always pushed us to study. So for them, it wasn't even an option.
That's amazing.
That after high school, we would not go to universities. That was absolutely normal. That was the path we were supposed to take. For my father, for example, at the age of 13, he was pulled out of school by his father because his father needed help in the business side. His father did not know how to read and write, but my father did. So he was a huge help and he really made his business go bigger. And he was very successful in a very young age in business again. But that's not what he wanted for us. He wanted us to have a higher education. That was extremely important. He was very smart himself, but he didn't have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
And I know that looking back, it seems crazy. I'm only in my 30s, and if I speak to my friends who are in their 30s about their father or their mother, such stories don't exist. So growing up, this is all I knew, and I didn't realize that wasn't a common thing. And the more I got to experience the world and the different culture, the more I realized how big of a deal it is actually coming from those type of culture, those type of background, and really pushing your children to not necessarily do better, but take a different path and really focus on the studies. So my whole life, and all of us, we all been to universities,
Wow.
grad school, and we really push and push and push, the 5 of us. My other sister is a dentist. My other sister worked at non-profit organizations. My brothers also, they went to college. And they chose different paths, but still in the same idea of all of us had to study. And the story of my mom, same idea. She finished high school, and then right away she worked. She didn't study after high school. And then she met my father, and then she took care of us she never worked my whole childhood. My dad also, since he got married a bit late, with my mom, he was always home. He was the one bringing us to school in the morning, and then we had a break from 12 to 2. He would bring us home. We have lunch at home, and then he would bring us back to school from 2 to 6. We've always felt we were the center of their world, their attention, and I thought it was the same thing for every parent and every kid, that the whole world revolved around them.
Yeah.
Then it's interesting. Then I met my husband and husband's family, and it's very different.
Yeah.
A lot of things also. How you introspect with your own childhood and your own life, and you realize that everybody's different, and we are the product of what we got as kids, I guess, and I really see it.
Wow. There's so much to unpack here. What an interesting childhood. I want to ask you a couple of things. You mentioned when you moved to France, you felt very like an outsider and not really welcomed. What does that do to a kid? You were very young.
I
Like,
was
how has it shaped you? You're very resilient and ambitious. What did that do to you?
So you're absolutely right. I can't emphasize that enough. The fact that I went to France from Morocco from the age of 9 to 13 and then went back to Morocco.
Yeah.
So imagine I'm a Moroccan girl going to a French country. Yes, I speak French fluently, but we have a little bit of an accent when we
Mm-hmm.
speak French in Morocco because we're influenced by the Arabic culture around us. People are kind of teasing me, oh, do you ride in camels in Morocco? That's your way of transportation.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't know.
Yeah.
We didn't have the internet, you know. We're talking, we're in the 90s, and people will genuinely thought Morocco was like this desert place. Well, I kept on telling them, no, it's a city like Paris. It's the same. We have cars. I grew up with chauffeur and housekeepers,
Wow.
and then I'm spending in France 4 years. About I come back to Morocco, and I'm the French girl. So I don't fit in again
Yeah.
in my original Moroccan culture because I've been too
Yeah.
franchised in a different country. So it's very interesting how it was hard to find my identity throughout those years. Grew up in France for my whole middle school, which also shapes your years from 9, 10, 11, 12. Your body changes. We have a
Yeah.
hormone and everything changes and you develop a personality. And then coming back to Morocco, and then it was very hard because by the time I came back, it was high school. So it's 9, 10, 11, 12. And ninth grade in Morocco is a turning point when you have an exam at the end of the year. And if you don't do well, you have to repeat the grade and it pushes you behind. So coming from a French school, the curriculum was a little bit easier in France compared to Morocco. So it was very hard to catch up. So first I'm coming back to a country, different culture again, different friends, and then I have to survive because if I don't pass those exams,
Yeah.
then I'm
You're
going
going
to
back.
repeat a grade, and I don't want to repeat a grade.
Yeah.
That was very, very traumatic, and it was a turning point. From a young age, I was 13, 14, kind of had a moment when I was like, okay, what do I want to do in life? I knew I wanted to be a doctor from a young age, 8, 9. I've always said, oh, I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up, but that was all up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I was all sure, one day, you're right, we'll see, you know? At this point, I was like, okay, now life starts. I got to do it because I felt like if I would repeat a grade, I would not be worthy enough to become a doctor,
Wow.
good enough.
That's so much pressure.
That is so much pressure, but you know what? It shaped me because at that point, I started focusing a lot in school. I started cutting my TV hours, you know,
Wow.
and really being focused and driven in what I want to do and kind of canalizing my energy and my passion in a very strict way, which is a very young age to do that. But
Yeah.
if I hadn't gone to France and then back to Morocco, I would have never had that shift in
Wow.
my perspective about how to handle life. Because you know, once you get comfortable in a system, you just cruise along. That was really my turning point, and I spoke about it my whole life. When I decided to focus on my studies and to become a doctor and to be the best version of myself. So I was very competitive with myself, not with the people around me. Initially, I was in Bet Rivka, it's a Chabad school in Morocco. We were maybe 5, 6 girls in the grade. So it's not like we were many kids, and it's not like everybody was passionate about studies or even motivated. So it was truly a challenge I had put upon myself for me. And I became from the last person in the class toward the end to crawling up slowly to the top student of the class. But it took a full year to have that transition. But that transition and the hard work that I put into in that young year formed me for the rest of my life, essentially. Meaning, yes, it's hard. Yes, you're going to have challenges. Yes, it's like impossible what I'm asking myself, but I'm going to try and I'm going to do it. And that, I took that for my whole career. And then I've done over 20 years of studies after that and many different hardships, which I can mention, but it's okay. It's hard. You're going to fail. You get up and you just keep on doing it.
It's such an important lesson. All of us learned that hopefully at some point, but I think the age that you learned it is so incredible. It's a lot of work for a 16, 17-year-old girl to be self-disciplined like that, right? Like
Right.
a
Absolutely.
lot of us get to college and that's when we're like, "Oh, what am I doing with my life?" And you set it up in a way that when you get there, you already know what you're doing, right?
Fail is exactly what happened
Wow.
because I disciplined myself in high school, such a young years, when you're supposed to hang out with your friends. I mean, I did have my friend system. I had a best friend that we were always hanging out together, studying together. I had friends, but I created that discipline in a way that, okay, we're going to hang out together, we're going to study together. Let's sit down and study, and then we can schmooze and hang out. My rules was I never study on Shabbat. So Shabbat, she will come home, we will speak the whole afternoon. But during the week was always, we meet up after school, we do homework together. So I wasn't a loner, meaning I was not studying by myself, being in my zone.
You weren't isolated.
I was not. Therefore, when I came to New York and I was 17 years old, by the way, English was my worst subject.
Really?
I hated language. I was very good at French literature, philosophy, biology, chemistry, math, physics, you name it. But English, I felt like it was just memorization. It didn't mean anything. The language, I was the worst at it. Okay, fine. So I come now and like, I have no choice. I got to do it. I'm like, I'm going to take bio, and came my first year. And of course, the classes are closed because juniors and seniors already took them. So I have to go see the dean and ask for a special permission. I'm at Stern, first month that I'm there. And I remember crying. I was like, oh, I don't know how to speak. I'm very scared of authority, obviously. I'm not going to go to a dean and start mumbling some words to try to convince her to let me take biology and chemistry. So it's just so frustrating, but I did it. I went there to her, but I still remember that feeling. And for some reason, she said, okay. Initially, the advisors were like, you're crazy, you're foreigners, you can't take biology and chemistry the first year, even our American girl can do it, you can do it. And I said, listen, I have no choice. I'm very good at sciences, and that will resonate with me, but the English lit and art history and all those stuff are not for me, okay? So I did take bio and chem my first year, and I did very well. And the reason is because the words were pretty similar. So that was like, okay, I got it. I was sitting in the front trying to just understand the English language from an audio perspective, from a visual perspective, reading it. So the first year was very, very hard. One of the hardest years I've had because of the transition from French to English, but I had that discipline, which means that, again, I was very involved in the French group. I was going out from Thursday night until Saturday night. Thursday night we'd go out, Friday no school, Shabbos would enjoy in the Shabbaton, and then Sunday was studying again and study with people. So I made very, very meaningful friendship from my study group because it's a giving and receiving type of relationship. And I always said that you can't do it alone, ever, anything. You need a group, you need a chavra, you need a support system. And I carried that attitude throughout my life. The second year, I met my husband. So you can imagine I'm 18 years old. We met in January, but very cold. Hi, bye. He's an Ashkenazi French person from an Ashkenazi background for many, many generations. So very cold at first. His second semester, which is my second year already, we start speaking a little bit more. There's a wave of 40 French people who came to Yeshiva University.
Wow.
Yossi, my husband, currently who was...
My husband's also Yossi. That's cute.
So Yossi becomes the president of the French club. I became the president of the Moroccan club, and we start getting closer and we start talking more. We speak until from September to December of my second year already. Eventually, I'm like, wow, he's interesting. He's smart. He's nice. I like his values. He's not what I thought he was. He's not as cool as I thought he was. So we start slowly over time falling in love. And again, I'm 18 years old.
Oh my God.
And my husband was 19. And I'm like, listen, I'm going to be a doctor. That's very important to me. I'm not going to give up on that ever, ever, ever. Obviously, I'm going to be a mom. I love kids. But it's important that you understand what you're getting into because I'm going to go to med school and I'm going to do all of that. And he was like, yeah, sure, I love that. Good for you as a good Ashkenazi husband. Yeah, of course I'll support you. Oh, sure, you want to be a doctor? That's so cool. That's great. Do it. So that was interesting. We developed that very strong relationship at a young age. Within a couple of months, we get engaged. By 2005, his parents come to Morocco because I'm a very traditional girl. Now I'm 19, and we got married at 20, which is the transition from junior to senior year in college. We have a whole financial plan in place. The money we're going to get from the wedding, we're going to use it for 1 year, and we're going to live with this amount of money, and we'll be fine. And then my husband, who's a CPA, he's an accountant, he got a job. So I was like, and then he can pick up the slack, so to say, while I still study, and then eventually we will
Wow.
work together. Because as resident and fellow, you get paid already.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, I did 1 year of research between college and medical school because instead of taking the MCAT that summer, which was only offered once a year, we got married. I worked for 1 year in research and I made money, which I saved toward medical school. So it works out
Wow.
eventually, when you come to young kids who have good intention, they want to start
Mm.
a Jewish home, it works out.
You became an adult very, very early on.
Very early, that
Yeah.
is
Wow.
true. That is very true.
Wow. Okay, we talked a lot about you being a doctor, but I want to maybe start with why cardiology?
Cardiology is a subspecialty of internal medicine. So,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, to become a cardiologist, you need to first do 3 years of internal medicine specialty. So, you become an internist, and then you apply for cardiology, which is a very, very competitive program to get into. Just for perspective, they take between 3 to 7, let's say, depending on which hospital, per year, which is not a lot. There's thousands of applicants. And just so you know, also, it's a male dominated field,
Yeah.
which means that it's only 10% of cardiologists are women.
That's a tiny, tiny number.
Insane. And as a matter of fact, for all the interviews that I've been to, I remember being the only woman, or maybe one more, very rarely, out of 20 men that were interviewing for the same spot. Going back into my younger years, I wanted to be a doctor and to impact lives in the most meaningful way. So, as a young, naive, non-medical person, I thought I'm going to be a surgeon. I was like, wow, surgery is so cool. You get to fix people up, and then they end up living a long life thanks to you. So initially I was like, neurosurgery, it's so exotic, it's so cool, it's so meticulous and difficult. I realized unfortunately there's not much you can do. There's some cancer you can treat with neurosurgery, but most of them are not treatable. And if people come with a stroke or things like that, most of the time it's too late, or you mostly give medicine. So I didn't find that field to be the most rewarding from you saving the most amount of people. Okay, fine. I was like, still, I'm going to be a surgeon, we'll figure it out. I go through med school now, I go through my surgery rotation, and I find that surgery is a very cold field, meaning you have a table, you're going to put the patient down completely naked with a little towel on top, and you're going to start cutting and suturing and removing things, and then by next. So I felt it was too mechanical for me. I needed the contact with the patient, the long-term relationship with the patient that makes it worth it. Because otherwise it was just too in, out, in, out. So then I was like, okay, which field would affect the most lives? And at the same time have this long-term interpersonal
Wow.
relationship that I'm longing for. And I found that cardiology definitely does that. Because as a cardiologist, you interfere in somebody's life by extending their life significantly. Somebody is having a heart attack, they're coming to the hospital, we're doing a stent, boom, this person was supposed to die at 40 or 50 years old, and now they're going to live until 90 or plus. So that's so cool. You just saved somebody's life.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you follow them for life. The procedure part is like a 15-minute, 30-minute procedure, but then they come to you every month, every 3 months, every year. You get to meet
It's
them,
amazing.
their family. You get to treat their whole family, their friends. It's very, very unique because you are interfering in somebody's life, whether through a procedure or through medical care, because a lot of patients need to take medicine to help them live longer, and I've seen them firsthand. And at the same
Wow.
time, you still have that relationship with them. So I love that.
It's so just a fun fact. I'm an EMT, and but by us it's the opposite. Like we do CPR on a patient, then we bring them to people like you, and we don't know what happens to them. We don't do the follow up. So it
Right?
must be a really rewarding feeling to have that continuous relationship with the patient.
It is.
I'm
Absolutely.
curious though, medical school is hard, right? Was there any moment that you had where you're like, what am I doing?
Oh yes,
Really?
1,000 times, a
So what kept you
thousand million
going?
time, 1,000 million time. So as passionate as I am, as dedicated as I am, there was maybe a million time when I told myself, am I doing the right thing? Am I sure I want to be a doctor? Even though if you meet me, if you know me, you say, oh, she was born to be, oh no, a million times, a million times.
Wow.
So like I mentioned, I got married at 20. I had my first child, I was 22, right, going into medical school in Israel. So every transition years are very hard. So the first year of college was hard, but then it was easier. The first year of medical school was hard. The reason being is because, like I said, we had moved at this point. I don't know if I mentioned it, but after Yeshiva University, I did 1 year of research at NYU, and then I got accepted to medical school in the Technion in Israel. And now, during my year
Moved again.
moved again, during my gap year
Wow.
of research, I actually had my first daughter, Ariel, who's 16 today. She was totally planned, totally welcome, totally wanted. The reason being, I wanted to be a mom. And I knew that if I was going to wait until I'm done with my studies, it will build resentment. Because you want something so bad, but you're not going to let yourself to have it because you're going to wait, oh, after this, after that, after that. But it never ends. So I said I'll have my child and we'll figure it out. So I had her at 22. She's born in July. I'm moving from here to Israel because medical school starts in October in Israel. So I want to move to give myself enough time to be with her, to find the right space for her, the right childcare for her, and relocate and be comfortable in the new country. The reason why we also moved to Israel, the way Hashem does things, it's insane. My husband, who's an accountant CPA, also did not get in America the visa to be able to stay here. So his company transferred him from KPMG New York to KPMG Israel.
Oh my gosh.
So his transfer, I'm accepted to the Technion in Israel. So both of us are moving to Israel for both of us, not one for the other, but for both of us. So again, there is no resentment part.
Yeah, because that's
either.
huge. Yeah.
Right, that's huge. So we're there. We have our baby now. I'm breastfeeding her, taking care of her, completely mommy style, and mommy mode at that time. And then I find a daycare where they take her in Israel. It's very family oriented, so they take her 7 o'clock in the morning until about 4. And my school anyway starts at 8 and finish at about 3 or 4. So that's perfect. And it's 5 minutes away from medical school. We rented an apartment 5 minutes away from school. Everything is 5 minutes distance and close by. So initially I put her in a GAN and I go to school, and every 3 hours I go back and forth to breastfeed her.
Wow.
Because I'm that type of mom. I need to be the best version of myself in both worlds. So sure, breastfeed her, go back to school, breastfeed her, go back to school. And then I used to take a break, now no studying from the time I pick her up until I put her to bed. So let's say from 4 until 7 o'clock, I will exclusively be with her, zero studying. Then I will eat a little bit, spend some time with my husband, study until, let's say, 11 o'clock midnight, spend some time with my husband, and repeat that the next day. So that was hard. But eventually, it gets easier, you get to a new rhythm, you get to fit in your life a little bit more. And then I did med school, which was fine. I come back to America. Now I'm pregnant of my second one. I wanted to have sibling close in age for my kids. My husband is working in his company, KPMG, New York at the time. And I'm taking it easier. I'm like, you know what? Instead of going straight into my elective, I'm going to do the transition for a year and a half instead of 6 months and have my child, spend time with him, do some rotations eventually, and then we have to go back to Israel for a couple of months, let's say 3-4 months, to graduate. And at that time, I go back with my 2 youngest one, and my husband goes back and forth between Israel and New York. And then we finally come back to America to relocate completely after I graduate from med school. So that's
Wow.
okay. We're here. We've done it. We're here. I'm a doctor. Now I need to get into residency and fellowship. But at this time I said, you know what? Let's take it easy. I'm going to have my third child. I am going to study for my boards because studying for the boards is like a whole different ball game. Now I have kids and it's much harder to study when you have children. Once I passed my test, then I applied for residency when my youngest was 2, my middle child was 5, and my oldest was 8. So now I have 3 children, and I'm starting residency, which is a specialty to become an internist.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. Okay, you know what's interesting about you is that you seem like a very thought out person. And sometimes when people are thought out, they have a very hard time letting things just happen, right? But you seem to also have the part where you're like, we're going to do it and we're going to figure it out. It's an interesting combination that I don't think a lot of people have.
So you're right, and it comes from Hashem. Because if you believe in Hashem, if you believe that whatever is happening to you happened for a reason, And again, I'm using my Chabad background. And if you understand that, okay, yes, you make your plan, you're a decisive person, you know what you want, and Hashem is going to take care of the rest. And yes, Hashem's changed my plan a million times. Did I think I was going to go to med school in Israel? Absolutely not. Did I love Israel my whole life and always wanted to live there? Absolutely yes.
Wow.
Was it one of the best years of our life? Absolutely yes. But I would have never thought that I would be accepted in Israel and Latin America for medical school with my type A personality and all the good grade and good effort I put in. So, number one. Number two, did I think I was going to marry young? No. From a Moroccan background, you get married after you finish your studies.
Yeah.
When I told my dad that I met this guy and I wanted and we were thinking about getting married, and he was like, "But what about you becoming a doctor? You're never going to be able to do it if you get married because then you have kids and you just give up on everything." And I said, "No, I won't." And I proved him wrong, but whew, yeah, so yeah, it was hard.
Wow.
But thank God, Hashem, I can only say Hashem put me back on track a million times, and between the unplanned things that happened in my life, if you look back now, the whole puzzle fits. I mean, if we
Yeah.
hadn't gone to Israel, we would not have gotten my husband's visa, which was a specific blanket visa code that accepts and transform the visa into a green card because you've been to two different countries with the same company. I mean, if we hadn't done that, there's no way we would have gotten a green card. So, and the one, and my husband is French, and I'm French and Moroccan. There's no other way to see that country. It's either you get married to an American
Yeah.
or you do our process, which took almost 20 years to become Americans.
Wow.
So that wasn't easy either. So the whole thing just fits back in the puzzle, and you look at it like, thank you, Hashem. Like everything just makes sense. Plus, the fact that I went to the Technion definitely helped me get into cardiology fellowship. Like I mentioned, it's a very competitive, difficult program, and I was already in a Shomer Shabbos program at Maimonides Medical Center in New York, and I wanted to stay in the Shomer Shabbos program for the cardiology fellowship. Like I said, it's 1 in a million. It's like winning the lottery. And the program director in Maimonides is from the Technion. So if
Oh.
you think about that, that's insane. I mean, already we connected over us having the same blueprint
Yeah.
of our research thesis that we did. It's like had a blue folder. So we connected already just over that. So again, if I had gone to a different school, God knows everything we do end up playing a role. It's
Wow.
meant for a reason.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful. I read something that you said. I'm quoting you. There's a tremendous pressure in the medical field to perform and to be the best. You cannot be distracted by having like other interests, you write, outside of medicine and a family. Who has time for that? And you talk about the fact that for a long time you separated your professional life and your family and friends and all the rest of it. And then recently you started integrating all of it. Can you talk to me a little bit? Because I'm at that point as well. Like when I started this podcast, I started having a social media and I hadn't had it before. And I had people like from my EMT world say like, oh my God, I can't believe you do this and this. And then I had people from my professional world say, oh my God, I can't believe you're an EMT. And no one knew about the different parts of my life, right? It was very separate. And I'm at a time in my life where I'm learning to integrate and to show all the different sides of myself to whoever I meet. So I'm curious what that journey was like for you.
That's a very important point that you're raising right now. I've only become open about who I am, with the both worlds only 5 years ago, 4 years ago. That happened with COVID. So everything in life, you always need a trigger. You need something that's
Mm-hmm.
gonna move your world and change everything. So, like I mentioned, for years as the doctor, there is no gender. I'm not a woman. I'm not a
Yeah.
man. I am a physician in training. In the back of my head, because I'm a woman, I have to prove myself to the world that I'm better than. Right away, there's bias that come around, oh, you're a woman, so therefore you don't know what you're doing, or you're not as good as a man doctor. There's this stereotypical idea that the man or a cardiologist even has to be this old white man who comes into the room. I mean, so many times I will come into the room with my students being mostly men, taller, whatever you name it, than me. And right away, people will refer to them as a doctor and think I'm
Really?
or them the doctor and me I'm like the person, the nurse or whatever you name it. They wouldn't necessarily see me as the authority. In the medical world, there's hierarchy in what type of specialty we're in, and a lot of physician or a lot of rules have or answers have to come from the cardiologist. So let's say somebody needs to get a kidney transplant, they will not get the kidney transplant unless they get a clearance from me, from the cardiologist. And who am I? This cute little girl. Yeah, but I'm the one who's gonna have to decide if this person is gonna get approved for a kidney transplant or not. So we get a lot of authority. That not just that, the most complicated case in internal medicine are being sent to us for us to answer them. Very complicated questions and cases, and we're talking about multiple specialists coming to me, older men, older people coming to me say, "Oh, hi, Dr. Rosanel, you're a cardiologist. What do you think about that? What should we do about this?" So already you have to wear this type of hat where you are the authority and you are above all of them when it comes to answering them to those specific matters and questions, and it's a pretty heavy load to carry. Even all the emergency room doctors, whenever they have a question, I don't know what to do, let's add the cardiologist. So we get this to be this answering machine, the one who know it all in the medicine world. It took a long time to accept that and to accept that role and to fit into that role. So already for many, many years, I had to separate my two lives. There is the mom life, like I said, I'm a young mom, and at the same time, I'm working in the hospital. First, you're working as an intern, so the intern is the lowest grade you can be. I've always compared the hospital training with the military training. For 1 year, you do everything everybody tells you. The most difficult task, but that's how you learn. But you have to do them, and it's so hard. Then you get upgraded as a second year resident, where now you get to teach the interns and tell them what to do and supervise them. Then you get to be a third year resident when you supervise teams. But again, in that setting, I'm just a doctor. I'm not a woman, I'm not a mother, I am just a doctor. And when I transition into the Chumash party for my children or the Hanukkah parties, I will never either speak about my doctor experience or speak about the fact that I'm a doctor or I'm the one who works. I mean, most of my life I've been with women who do not work, which I love that, by the way. And I was very involved also in the community and with the kids in the school. I didn't want them to feel less than by me being a doctor, a professional. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of people saying things that are not true, but I will not correct them. And I will not show my superiority or in knowledge to them, ever, ever, ever. I was just a mom and listening and participating and smiling and making them feel good. Even within my own family, my aunts, my cousins, my parents, I never showed them or showed off that I was a doctor. It was all about the kids or all about the work. Then COVID came. So I was a first year cardiology fellow. All the older doctors, older meaning just above the age of 50, were staying home. The younger doctor, which is us, had to be in the hospital. We were the strongest from an immune system, but also the strongest in knowledge and the strongest in dealing with emergencies. The cardiologists, which is me. Even though I'm a cardiology fellow, I had to be there, do the central line. I was the code leader, meaning the code leader is whenever somebody is having a cardiac arrest, I was the one dividing the tasks, telling everybody what to do and deciding when the person would be dead or not. That's one of the decisions, but it's a big, big role. So I was a code leader and we would have 14 to 17 codes a day. I'm talking about my Maimonides, I'm talking about the epicenter of COVID, I'm talking about 800 deaths that I've witnessed myself being there. So we were pulled in the front line from Sunday to Friday, and we had many 24-hour shifts that we didn't have before. And usually after my 24-hour shift, I have an out. I take my kids for breakfast, I take them to school, I pick them up, I go on a date with my husband, I make sure to do something on my post-school day. That was so precious. It's like a reward from working for 24 hours. And we couldn't do that because COVID, everything was closed. We were only staying homes and the kids were having Zoom. And it was very, very hard. This COVID moment was one of the hardest in my own life because, like I said, I became a doctor to save people, not to watch them die under my watch. I did everything all the treatment. We did the antibodies when they come up. We did the azithromycin. We did everything. We did intubation, no intubation, everything you can think of. And they were still dying. So my kids were in school at Yeshiva Flatbush. My son, who is at the time, so that was 4 years ago, he was 9. And the teacher said, oh, we're going to write a letter to Dr. XYZ. We're going to tell him thank you for being on the front line and saving the world, da, da, da. Well, that doctor was actually an outpatient doctor. All the outpatient clinic were closed, so he was not on the front line. The only one that were on the front line were us, the trainees, the fellows, the residents, and the young attendings. So my son answers, dear Dr. Rosanel, Mom, thank you so much for being on the front line and for saving people in the world. So the teacher called me and she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were a doctor. Again, my son is 9.
Oh,
He's been in the school forever, since he was 2 years old. And no
wow.
one knew I was even a doctor.
Oh my
I wasn't
gosh.
speaking about it. So you can't blame someone when they don't know about it. I'm like, no, it's okay. And at the time, I was starting, because there was no out, and we were seeing so many things, I was starting texting on, not texting, on Twitter. So Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Okay, my patient just died while I just intubated him. Does it make any sense? And people were like, yes, mine too. And right away. And on my patient, I gave high flow nasal cannula and he still died. And my patient, I gave diuretic. My patient, I gave. So we started interacting in the sake of helping humanity on social media, on Twitter. And right away, it picked up. A lot of tweets picked up. I got called by the Time magazine, by New York Times, by People magazine. And they wanted to hear my story. They wanted to hear, the fact that I'm a mom. And at the time also, my husband didn't want me to go back to work or training. He said, listen, we want you to be with us. Take a year off. Take 6 months off. We don't want you to go back there. We'd rather we have a mom alive rather than the doctor who's dead. And there was a lot of doctors who were dying also at the time. And I told him, I can't do that. I can't. That's the whole point of me becoming a doctor, is to help people, to help the world. When I was younger, I even wanted to be a doctor in the army, in Israel, and the IDF. So that's my calling. If I don't do that now, I won't be able to live with myself. So I said, yes, I'll be safe. I was dressed like an astronaut, completely covered head to toe. I would undress before I even come home. I would shower for an hour. No one will touch me for like a couple of times until I disinfected myself. But I said, I will not do that. I can't. So that was a very big decision. That my family wanted me to stay home. And I said, no, I can't. I've got to do it. And I didn't do it as of... I'm going to do it for XYZ reason. I did it because I had to do it. March, April, May were the hardest. Then everything calmed down and was much more manageable. And then we went on a trip with for my daughter's bat mitzvah, because we did a trip. There was no party, and we went to all the national parks, and that was so important. For 2 or 3 weeks, I was just with nature, my husband and my kids, and that just brought me back to life, because that was really, really hard to be going through this COVID, to be on the trenches essentially for 3 months straight. But the reconnection with the nature, reconnection with the national parks, and my kids and my husband was like,
Okay, first of all, I feel like we can do an entire episode about what the toll that COVID took, and also the toll of seeing people die in those numbers. But also, thank God you had that feeling that you have to do this, because if everyone was just like, okay, I'm gonna stay home because this is almost like the logical thing to do, we would have no doctors helping people, right? So thank you for doing that. You've been a frum woman this entire time, right? From start to finish. And I can imagine how hard that is with the demanding career you have. I want to ask you about a specific incident that you shared with me, which is you got invited to this conference and it was on Shabbat, and then after contemplating it a couple of times, you decided to speak up and ask if they can switch it. So I want to ask you what that experience was like, and like what that taught you about asking for what you need.
Yes, so actually it goes back to the first part, which is when you want to become a doctor, you choosers, the saying goes like that, beggars are not choosers. So
Yeah.
essentially, if you want to become a doctor, you don't get to really choose which medical school you go to. Medical school chooses you. Because I had my kids and I took the time off and I kind of separated the two of them, said, okay, first we're going to go to the Technion. Never had to work on Shabbat there. That's fine. Come back to America. I had my second child, my second and then my third. And I'm like, I want to go to a Shomer Shabbos residency program. That way, I understand I'll be working a lot of Sundays. I'll be working every Christmas, New Year's, but I will never work on Shabbos and work on the holidays, on Chagim. That was important to me. And when something is important, you pray, 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 and then you put yourself out there and you voice it. If you don't ask, you don't get. So I asked, and they gave it to me, which is a big deal. Then, well, now I'm in residency. I want to become a cardiologist. I know it's already impossible to become one. I was in Maimonides, and I know that in my program, there is a way to do the schedule. It's not that hard. I'm very big into finding solutions. Meaning, okay, you're going to put me on 24-hour call on a Sunday instead of a Saturday. Big deal. Just do that. You want to put me on all the Sundays? Put me on all the Sundays. I'm willing to get a bad schedule as long as my values are not being affected. So thank God also I asked, and I also got it for the Shomer Shabbos for cardiology. Now, when you come back to that episode, when I'm so lucky, I'm invited to speak in the American College of Cardiology, which is the foundation and the guidelines of all cardiology. It's going to be 56,000 cardiologists from all over the world. And I'm going to speak to a big audience, and they put me on Saturday because it's a big honor. It's the first day, it's the opening day. And here I am, and I'm like, I can't use a microphone on Shabbat. I'm going to lower myself and say, no, I don't want it for Shabbat, for Saturday, which is, even though it's a big honor, I'll take it for the second or the third day of the conference, which is less people, less view, but it doesn't matter. That's what's important to me. So that, first of all, it was very gutsy to ask because, those are big organizers. There's a panel involved. I'm speaking among 3 other people in the group we like a lot. And those people are like CEO, CFO of big company, you name it.
Wow.
And I am saying, sorry, I can't do it.
Were you nervous about asking, or it was very natural for you?
I was nervous. Of course, you're always nervous because you're like, what if they don't say yes? And then I'm going to miss the opportunity of my life. But you do it. Then I asked, and thank God they switched it to Sunday, and that was fine. And even when I'm in the conference, I'm among Goyim over there. They don't understand why I'm not taking the elevators, why I'm not taking pictures with them. It's like the first day, and they know I take pictures all the time. So I go earlier. I go Thursday, Friday already. I take tons of pictures on Friday.
It ties back to everything you're saying. It's like if this is your values, you can make it work no matter what, right? Which seems like it's your whole story, really.
Exactly.
It's incredible. I learned a lot from you, honestly. There's a lot in your life that you did that I can apply to mine. It looks very different, but the lessons are the same. So personally, thank you so much. I want to end off by asking you something I ask all my guests, which is, what does being a trailblazer mean to you?
For me, it means somebody who's making a new path, or somebody who's using the same path and make it easier for others. So if I had to categorize the Trailblazer, or even, I know the name of your podcast is Trailblazer, and I love what you're doing. You're trying to highlight different women, different experiences, different careers, to show women, Jewish or not, that anything is possible, that if you put your head into it, it's fine. My particular story is a story of a woman coming from who's an immigrant herself, coming from a different background, different culture. The Moroccan Sephardic culture is very different than the American culture. And at the same time, pursuing a Jewish life, a frum Jewish life of marrying young, having children young, keeping the Jewish values, which have been ingrained in me as a kid and are not going anywhere. And at the same time, going through my passion or my calling that I want to do. I want to become a doctor. I want to become a cardiologist. And Baruch Hashem, I've done it over those years. It's never finished. I mean, right now I'm just finished from. I worked in a big hospital here, Memorial Regional Hospital, for a couple of years, and then I decided to branch off and to do my own private practice. And now I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm not just a doctor. I am an entrepreneur. And the reason why I did that is to have more flexibility again for my family and for Shabbos as well. So to answer your question, thank you so much first for inviting me.